Hello, this is James D'Angelo and welcome to the Bitcoin 101 Blackboard series. Today we are going to be looking at multi-signature wallets. And this is going to be a two-part series. So in the first part, we're going to generate a multi-sig address. And all Bitcoin multi-sig addresses start with the number 3. In the second part, part 2, we're going to spend from our multi-sig. So we're going to need a few different Bitcoin addresses and their private keys to be able to spend the funds from this one particular address. Okay, so multi-sig is a very hot topic right now. In light of all the wallet thefts and all the phishing and hacking and all that going on, multi-sigs are one of the best options available right now to store your Bitcoins. And really what the beauty of it is it allows you to send funds to an address that starts with a 3, so maybe 3JKL439, all right, for 31 characters of gibberish, right? If it starts with a 3, any of these addresses that start with a 3 can require up to 3 passwords or 3 passcodes to release the funds. So if you want to send Bitcoins from an address that starts with a 3, you will likely need at least 2 of the 3. And this all depends how you set it up. But the beauty is being able to set up a multi-sig account has myriad advantages when it comes to security. And this is because you can store one of the private keys in your house, another private key perhaps in a safe deposit box, and you could even send a private key to an online wallet provider. Okay, and the only way that you'd be able to spend funds is you would need 2 of these 3 keys. So usually how people use this is maybe they leave this in the safe deposit box. They have this one on their computer. All right, and they go about regular precautions in guarding it. And this one's on sort of a wallet provider like a blockchain.info or some service that is now incorporating multi-sigs. So this is your wallet provider. Now, say you want to go and make a payment from your multi-sig address. Well, you'd start to send the payment to overstock.com, right? Well, you might initiate this payment with your wallet provider, and they would send the first part of this transaction to overstock.com, but that doesn't release the Bitcoins. You would then need to send from your private key as well. And what's great about this is your wallet provider can do some regular sort of banking analysis, okay? Is this an unusual spend for this person who's using it? Is this over their daily limits? They can run all sorts of algorithms to protect your coins from going right out. So you could set up a number of preferences in your wallet provider for your own daily limits and preferred merchants. Okay, so if you know that you're going to be doing most of your business with a handful of people, you'd put them in the wallet provider, and any addresses that you don't include would probably be rejected by the wallet provider until you either contacted them with an SMS or a phone call, or you can override the system entirely by grabbing your private key out of the safe deposit box and using the one on your computer. And again, you would have 2 of 3. Okay, so all you need is 2 of 3. And what's great about that is even if your wallet provider goes out of business or they decide not to let you run that transaction, you still maintain entire control because you have 2 of the 3. And the beauty of this is, as long as you have one in the safe deposit box and another on your computer, or even one on your phone and another on your computer, you've developed a very robust system to hacking. Okay, so there's a lot of coins being stolen right now by hackers, but hackers have a really hard time coordinating different devices. And most of the security comes from keeping things on different devices or even on paper in sort of a paper wallet, or even in some form where it's in cold storage. So remember, 2 of 3 really just exponentially increases your chances of keeping your Bitcoin secure. It's likely to be 10 to 1,000,000 times more secure than just storing your private key in one place. Okay, and there's really no disadvantage. In many instances, it'll provide only advantages because now you'll be able to feel more comfortable as you're working with companies online. You won't be relying on a wallet provider or your own computer security. You'll now have a robust system of security. And that is why some people are calling 2014 the year of multi-sig, because we're going to see lots and lots of wallet providers adopting this technology. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh my God, this sounds so complex. Well, today we're actually going to program our own multi-sig. We're going to generate an address, and you'll see it's just really, really easy. So there's no excuse for your wallet provider not to start providing this functionality. And we know that not many people are using it because all you have to do is go to the Bitcoin rich list and look at the top 100 addresses, and you're not going to see one multi-sig there. And how do we know? Because none of these addresses are starting with a 3, which means they have in some way compromised their level of security. So hopefully, as mentioned by Tony Galippi from BitPay, we'll start to see more and more of these top 10 or top 100 addresses protected with a 3. Okay, the 1 means insecure, where 3 means added level of security. It means those addresses were created using multi-sig. So yes, 3 is the key. You won't have a multi-sig address that won't start with a 3, just like you won't have a regular address that won't start with a 1. And it's exponentially more secure. And as we've already mentioned, it allows you to have a trustless setup with your wallet provider. The wallet provider will be able to administer your account, protect your account, but they will not be able to take your funds out, okay? Because they will only have access to one of the signatures, and to do any send, you will need 2. And this eliminates them from any sort of liability. They will no longer be able to go out of business and leave you out in the cold, but you'll be able to gain from the services that they can provide. The other nice thing about having a wallet provider with daily limits, preferred merchants, and all that set up is, say for example, someone runs into your house with a gun and says, give me your private keys, or tries to send your Bitcoins out. Well, it's one thing to have a gun against you and you're able to give them your private keys and you don't have multi-sig and they can take all your Bitcoins. But if you have multi-sig, you can just go, hey, I've got multi-sig. You're gonna have to go get my wallet provider, or you're gonna have to break into my bank and get the stuff out of the safe deposit box, okay? Again, and I know I'm hammering this home, multi-sig provides another massive, massive layer of security, okay? So you maintain 2 of the 3 needed. Now, there's other things you can do if you have a multi-sig. You could do things like a 3-party escrow, and I'll let you look that up, but quickly, let's say it's Alice wants to send money to Bob. But Alice and Bob don't really trust each other, but they might trust the company in the middle, sort of a new decentralized type of eBay. And what they do is they set it up so that each of them has 1 key. Okay, so you have 1 private key here, 1 private key here, and 1 private key here. And after the transaction is done, if Alice and Bob are arguing, then eBay would be able to resolve this dispute because eBay will hold the 3rd key and they'll be able to finish off on the 2 of 3 for sending the funds to either back to Alice or forward to Bob. And with this sort of situation, you could even set up things like chargebacks, all the things that people were looking to avoid initially with Bitcoin, but are missing a little bit. Okay, so having some of those features in certain situations can be very advantageous. And that particular setup is called a 3-party escrow. Okay, and other people have mentioned that, oh, well, there's this other idea called Shamir's secret. And Shamir's secret is, admittedly, it's just a beautiful name. And it sounds so provocative, right? Shamir's secret. And it's basically a system where you can have 1 private key, for example, on 6 pieces of paper. And any combination, say for example, of 4 of those pieces of paper will give you back the original private key. Now, that's nice. It provides some advantages, but it really sets up almost all the problems that you previously had with just regular signature. Because anytime you bring those 4 sheets of paper together, well, one of the people who might have helped bring those pieces of paper together can now see the private key and they can turn around and quickly send the funds. Or you might be on a machine with sort of a man-in-the-middle attack. Okay, so anytime you bring just 1 key together, you've kind of put yourself at risk. So try to avoid the hype and the beauty of this name, Shamir's secret. It is not as cool or as powerful as multi-signature, and really should just not be used, okay? So if you're really looking to increase security, and you should be, then multi-signature is the way to go. And these are the 2 reasons why, okay? So we've spoken about a couple examples where it can be used. There's a million more great ideas for using multi-sigs to protect things, to sort of set up maybe trust in sort of a board type situation where board members will be able to sort of vote with the money and stuff like that. There's so many ideas that can be incorporated into multi-sig. So with no further ado, let's jump in and take a look at how we can create our own multi-signature addresses. All right, we're going to try and generate one of these addresses that starts with a 3, and we'll be able to send some Bitcoins to it. And then in the next episode, we'll be able to take the money back out. Okay, so let's hop into the coding. So here I've got some code which I'll post onto GitHub that generates a multi-sig address from 3 brand new addresses on your Bitcoin D client. But the addresses can be from anywhere. They can be old addresses, okay? So as long as you have the private key to an address, you can add that address into a multi-sig account. So you can call, say perhaps you've got 2 brothers. They can each independently set up their own private keys, set up their own little wallet, and send you just the public address for those keys. And with that, you can generate a multi-signature address that a combination of the 3 of you can sign off on without ever having compromised the private keys with either one of you. So one brother will have his private key, the other will have his, and you'll have yours. But for this example, we're going to generate all 3 private keys, and well, you'll even get to see them on the screen. So here's the code, and we're just going to run it first and kind of talk about what happens. We hit F5 in our little idle thing, and it's creating some new addresses, okay? Brand new address pair number 1. And in Bitcoin, you might have noticed there's a few different formats for public keys and private keys. Well, Bitcoin D or the Bitcoin QT generates a compressed public address that looks like this. Then I had it spit out the private key, so you see the private key there. And then it has a less compressed public key, which you can use for creating the multi-sig addresses. And here we've got 3 address pairs. So here's a brand new address, here's its private key, and here's the less compressed public address, okay? And here's the 3rd one. And I got my code to spit this out so you can actually paste this into any Bitcoin QT or Bitcoin D and create a multi-sig address right there using these 3 public addresses. Okay, so here's one public address. This is the first one. Here's the second, which is right here. And here's the 3rd, which is right here. Okay, and this code, if you just stuff it into Bitcoin D or Bitcoin QT, will spit out a brand new multi-sig address starting with a 3. Now, let's take a look at this closely because there's one number in here that's very important. Bitcoin D, create multi-sig 2. This 2 is actually very key. 2 stands for the amount of private keys that you need to unlock the funds. So if you switch it to 1, any one of these private keys could actually spend money from that multi-sig address, which could be handy for certain situations. If you switch it to 2, then you need 2 of the 3, and if you switch it to 3, well, all 3 brothers, for example, would have to sign that transaction for money to be able to be spent from that multi-sig address, okay? In this case, we're generating a 2 of 3, so any 2 of these private keys would be required. Okay, and here are those private keys. So, just for fun, let's stuff that code into the terminal, okay? And I've got Bitcoin D already running, so you'll need Bitcoin D to be able to do all this stuff on your computer because we're doing calls to your own hard drive, to your own version of the blockchain. There's other ways to do these calls, and we'll talk about them in our next series of videos where we talk about APIs, but this time we're just going right in and looking at our own blockchain. So, we'll paste that code we just copied, and there you see the 2, there you see the 3 public addresses, okay? And once we hit return, we'll immediately get hit with a brand new multi-sig address that'll start with a 3. Watch. Boom, there it is. Okay, and there's our 3. And this is a Bitcoin address that you could send cash to today. And anytime you create a Bitcoin D, create multi-sig with these 3 public keys, you will get the same address. So I can paste that code in again and hit return, and you'll see that I get the exact same address. This address is aware of those 3 other addresses, okay? So it actually, inside it, holds that information. Now, just for fun, I'm gonna put up a new terminal window, and I'm gonna paste that code in, but have, instead of a 2, I'm going to have a 1 here, okay? And we're going to see what address it generates. And you'll see that that address is different, okay? So it's aware that it's a 1 of 3. So all you need is 1 of the 3 private keys to send funds. So these are 2 different addresses, okay? And let's go back and copy this code and regenerate our multi-sig 2 of 3 address by hitting return, okay? And you'll see that you've got 2 different addresses. One of these, this one, requires only 1 private key to sign off the funds, so any one of the 3. So if you're doing something with 2 other brothers, you could set up a few different accounts. One where anyone can spend the funds, another where 2 of 3 of you are needed to spend from the funds, and you could even set up one where all 3 of you have to agree to spend those funds. Okay, so this provides a lot more functionality than the way regular Bitcoin works, and this is one of the most beautiful and powerful features of Bitcoin. Okay, so this here is our 2 of 3 address. And if we go down here, we'll see that we have the same one here in the code, okay? So we generated that with the code. The redeem script is something that is unique to multi-signatures. So when you go to spend from your multi-signature address, you're going to see this whole new concept called redeem script. And this is required for spending from any multi-signature address. Doesn't matter if it's 1 of 3, 2 of 3, or 3 of 3. And so far in Bitcoin, it appears that you can only do 3 at the end, okay? So you can't do 5 of 7, maybe in the future, but it has a lot to do with sort of blockchain bloat and the size these transactions grow to. So if you're going to actually use these 3 addresses and this multi-sig address, well, I'm suggesting that you want to copy all this output and save it so you'll be ready for part 2, okay? And that's what we'll do. So we'll just copy this and then we'll just paste it into a little Word file so that we have it for later, okay? And then I'll just save that. So now what we have to do is go back and really understand what we did in terms of the code, okay? And so here's the live code right here that I just ran. And here's a bunch of comments up there. And for most things that you're going to do in Bitcoin with Python, you're going to need to download and install Bitcoin RPC programmed by Jeff Garzik. It's sort of a Python technicality, but you'll need to have that running, and you'll also need to have Bitcoin D running on your machine. Again, you won't need all of this to do multi-sig, but this will help you play around with multi-sigs and get to understand the ideas better if you can actually get in and look at the code. Okay, and we posted all of our code here at this address. Now, one problem with Bitcoin RPC is their connection file wasn't written to take advantage of multi-signatures, so we actually had to rewrite it a little bit. So you might want to copy our file and put that in if you're looking to run the same code. Okay, and then once you've done all that, it's all pretty straightforward, and all the code to generate all that stuff sits right here. Okay, so here we are calling to our local blockchain, the one on my laptop's hard drive. We set up a couple dictionaries for addresses, private keys, and public keys. And this is just a little code for the export that we just copied in the terminal. And you don't need to understand it to understand multisigs. Now, so what we did is we generated 3 new addresses. Again, you don't need to generate 3 new ones. You could use old ones. But we call the Bitcoin D get new address, which gives you a brand new address and stores it in your wallet DAT file. So any new address you generate with get new address will be stored in your wallet DAT file on your computer, and you'll always be able to call up the private key for that as long as you haven't lost your wallet DAT file. And then I just like to spit out how long these things are so I can get used to their length and realize right away if they're compressed or uncompressed. So I'm spitting out right here, it's 34 characters, okay? And then we spit out the private key. So dump private key is a Bitcoin D call as well. And here comes the private key. This is not the most standard format for private keys, but Bitcoin accepts a number of different formats, both for public and for private keys. And this is the one, for some reason, that they like to use. And again, it doesn't matter which format of private key you have, as long as you have one of them. All of them will generate your public key, and all of them will be able to release your funds. And then to get the sort of uncompressed public key or public address, we actually had to call validate address, which spits out a JSON script. And we're grabbing just the longer public key from the JSON script, which is used for generating multi-sigs, okay? And that is this one right here and the one we use to generate the multi-sig. And we loop that 3 times, so we generate 3 addresses. That's that code. That's all it is. And then this is the code that I had to just print out so you could paste something into Bitcoin D to see how it's working. So remember, that's the thing we had attached with the terminal. But here's where the real action happens, all right? So we take the 3 public keys that we generated and we just slap them right next to each other, okay? And we dump that into a variable called 3addy. And again, you can kind of see that right here. These are the 3 public keys, in this case, that get dumped into that one variable, 3addy. And then we do a call to a Bitcoin D, a Bitcoin QT function, standard function, add multi-sig address. And then we say the 2, which is the 2 of 3, and then we stuff in the 3 public addresses and get something called a multi-sig addy for multi-sig address. And there's a couple ways you can do this, right? You can use add multi-sig address, or you can use create multi-sig address, but only one of them spits out in a JSON the redeem script that you're going to need for part 2 of this video series. So we actually did it again, did multi-addy redeem, and got a redeem script over here through a JSON call. Okay, so all this code is right here, and it generates the multi-sig address right here. So before we go, so we'll be ready for part 2, is we're going to stuff a little bit of Bitcoin into this multi-sig address right here. So we'll go to my Coinbase account. Okay, I've got 7.59 Bitcoins, and I'll say send money. And then we paste the copied address, the multi-sig address, right? Starts with a 3. We love 3s. This is the year of the 3 address. And then we'll put in $1. Okay, and message. Send in to my multi-sig. Send money. Beep. It's done. So that'll take, the standard 6 confirmations before I can really access it. But it will be perfectly in time for our next video when we do part 2. And we'll have this redeem script. We'll actually figure that out in our next video as well. And there you have it. You've generated your first multi-sig address. And in part 2, we'll go through all the steps. It's a hair more complex to spend from a multi-sig address. Very cool stuff. This stuff hopefully will be incorporated into every wallet soon, and you won't need to program it or think about it, but you'll be able to use this enormous advantage that only Bitcoin can offer. Maximum security with very little risk, being able to store your money in between 3 places. And any compromise in any one of those 3 places gives the thief or the hacker 0. Great stuff. Multi-sig addresses. Stay tuned for part 2. Please remember to comment, like, subscribe, do whatever it is you do, and we'll see you at the next video.